Hey folks, thank you very much for tuning in. My name's YellowHat, and today we've got something big to cover. As of last week, Build 25 has been officially released for Pavlov VR, and with this comes a whole bunch of fixes and additions that will change the game. If you want to keep up to date with any stat changes or game updates in Pavlov VR, feel free to hit that subscribe button. With that said, let's get right into one of the biggest changes that's happened, Damage Falloff. Damage Falloff is something that pretty much every FPS has. This is the idea that as a bullet travels a longer distance, it loses energy, and as a result it'll do less damage the longer it travels. In Pavlov VR there have been 3 new statistical values that have been added to pretty much every weapon in the game. Damage Falloff, however, will only affect pistols, SMGs, and shotguns for the time being. Let's talk about how that works. The 3 new values are as follows: minimum falloff distance, maximum falloff distance, and falloff multiplier. Minimum falloff distance is where the damage falloff starts. Up until this point, damage is a flat number, and it's at this point where damage starts decreasing linearly. The rate at which damage decreases depends on both the multiplier and the max falloff distance point. With the current tuning of weapons, this is usually the point where a weapon takes one more bullet, or pellet in the case of shotguns, to kill. Maximum falloff distance is the distance where damage falloff stops. The damage after this point is flat damage and is calculated by taking the damage of the weapon multiplied by the falloff multiplier, which, speaking of, the falloff multiplier dictates the lowest damage that a weapon will do at its max range. Since falloff is linear, this will also partially affect how harsh the drop-off is. If you were to put these numbers into a graph and draw the lines between the points, you would have a straight line up until the minimum falloff distance point, then an angled line up until the maximum falloff distance point, and then another straight line that continues on forever. Each weapon has its own unique values, and as a result, every weapon has damage drop-off that declines at different rates. You can have a look at these exact numbers on the screen now. Link to this chart will be in the description. There will also be a link to a GitHub where all the numbers we're talking about will be as well. Let's go over an example of a weapon with damage falloff, so you can see exactly how it works. For this example, we're going to use the revolver. The revolver stats can be seen here. It normally does 50 damage and has 100% armor pen, so all damage will still go through. It hits its minimum falloff distance point at 10 meters, which is about this distance. After this point, it loses its 2-hit ability and drops to a 3-hit. Since falloff is linear, this means that it's still doing in the upper 40s for damage. The revolver's damage keeps dropping all the way to 35 meters. That's about this distance. At this point, it's now doing 34 damage because of its falloff multiplier of 0.68. Even then, the revolver is still a 3-hit body kill. After the max falloff point, the revolver's damage stays at 34. There's a few more things to mention as well. In addition to damage drop-off affecting bullet damage, it also affects armor damage and helmet damage values of weapons. I can already sense some concern with this, and so let me clear up a few things. For weapons that are meant to be one-hit headshots to helmets, they will remain a one-hit headshot as the helmet bleed value is unaffected by drop-off. This is mainly for the revolver and the Desert Eagle. Just to prove this to you, here's a clip of me at the max falloff range with the Desert Eagle still one-shotting a full health player with the helmet. With weapons that don't do 100 helmet damage, this means that if they are in falloff distance, depending on the numbers, they may take 1 extra headshot to kill. An example of this is the FAMAS. Since its helmet damage is currently coded at 50, which means that normally takes 2 headshots to remove a helmet, when it hits minimum falloff damage distance, this number goes below 50, and as a result, it takes an extra headshot to kill. Again, I do see the concern with this, and I want to bring up this point. With update 25, the balancing table that controls all of these values has been moved to a GitHub. What this means is that any weapon damage value or falloff value can be tweaked without having to ship a major update to the game. This is because every server reads this balancing table. In the case of custom servers, the server owners can modify these values on the fly, and they can be changed and implemented on a map switch. So, What are my thoughts on this new change? I definitely welcome it, and I believe that after a good amount of playtesting and feedback, it can reach a point where many people will be happy. I believe that it promotes weapon diversity, as weapons that normally weren't used have more of a reason to get used now. An example of this is the Desert Eagle. For the update, most players would use the revolver as it was a 2-hit at any range. Now that it falls off to a 3-shot, players actually have to make the decision on whether to use the revolver and play close angles, or use the Desert Eagle and go for longer range kills, with the trade-off being they get more ammo per magazine to do so. I would like to see some of the numbers, including armor damage and helmet damage, tweaked a little bit more. Again though, this requires a lot of playtesting in many different situations. What might seem to work statistically might not be all that practical. So far though, the weapons that have received these changes seem to be in a pretty decent spot right now. Maybe pistols and SMGs could use a little bit of an armor penetration buff, especially since TDM, for example, forces armor and helmet. But I think for now, most things are in a good spot. With all this said, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you learned something useful from this video. If you did, and if you liked the video, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to keep up to date with when I upload. Be sure to also check out my social links in the description below. Thank you again for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Take it easy.